Hello everyone and welcome to the biology lecture series, and today we'll be discussing the topic transportation. So we have already discussed some of the topics in the previous lecture. So we have discussed about the transportation in the higher plants, where we have studied about the transpirational cohesion theory. We have studied about the vasculature system of the plant. We have studied about the xylem and the phloem, which are the vascular tissue present in the plant. And then we have studied about the essence of the sap in the plant. And then we also studied about the transportation in the animals, in the higher organisms such as humans. So there we studied about the circulatory system and what are the components of the circulatory system. So one was blood. We studied about the blood. What are the types of the blood group? Okay, what are the functions of the blood? And then we'll study about the lymphatic system also in the later session. So before starting this lecture, I would like to mention that in this lecture, we'll be studying about the heart. What is the structure of the heart and how blood flow is taking place in the heart or within the heart. So let's start with this lecture. So here in this image, you can see, first of all, I'll give you a brief idea about the structure of the heart. All right, and then we will discuss that in detail. So image in the left here, this shows you the structure of the heart. So what you need to know, first, heart is 4-chambered. Okay, so what are the 4 chambers? Okay, these are the atrium. This is the left atrium. Here you have the right atrium. So these are the 2 chambers. And then we have these ventricles, right ventricle and the left ventricles. So all these atrium and the ventricles, they make up the heart. So heart is 4-chambered. And then you should know about all these aorta, which carry the oxygenated blood. Then you can see here, you can see the pulmonary artery. So artery usually, what it does, it carries the oxygenated blood. But here the pulmonary artery, it carries the deoxygenated blood. And it carries blood from the heart towards the lungs. Okay, so this is the pulmonary artery here. It carries deoxygenated blood. Okay, or you can say blood which is poor in oxygen, and it carries blood from the heart towards the lungs. So in the lungs, exchange of gases takes place. So it carries the blood which is poor in oxygen from heart towards the lungs. Here is the left pulmonary artery. Okay, then you can see here vena cava, superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. So this vena cava, this carries the deoxygenated blood. Okay, so this superior vena cava, we'll discuss about this in upcoming slide. This carries the deoxygenated blood from the upper body parts like neck and the head. All right, so from the region above the abdomen, you can say. Okay, region like head and the neck. So this carries the blood from these regions towards the heart. And the inferior vena cava, this carries the blood from the region below abdomen, you can say. That's why it is known as inferior. And it also carries the deoxygenated blood. So vena cava, this is the largest vein present in the human. Okay, then here you can see the coronary artery. This is the left coronary artery. This is the right coronary artery. This coronary artery, it carries the oxygenated blood. Okay, this carries the oxygenated blood. So you have to remember all these, which vein carry the oxygenated blood or which blood vessel carry the deoxygenated blood. Okay, so apart from this pulmonary artery, we have one pulmonary vein also. Okay, so this pulmonary vein, okay, one is pulmonary artery, another one is the pulmonary. I think they haven't shown the pulmonary vein here, but this is very important, pulmonary vein. Okay, so veins usually carry the deoxygenated blood, but the pulmonary vein, it carries oxygenated blood. So it carries oxygenated blood, means it carries the blood from where? From lungs towards the heart. So in the lungs, air is purified and it carries blood from the lungs towards the heart. So it carries the oxygenated blood. Okay. So this is the role of the pulmonary vein. Then here you can see, so in this diagram on the right hand side, here you can see the blood flow, and you can also see in which region the oxygenated blood is present and in which region deoxygenated blood is present. So here the region with the stripes, so this region, this carries the deoxygenated blood. So blood enters here, the deoxygenated blood enters here in the right atrium, and then the oxygenated blood, it leaves through this pulmonary vein, okay, and leaves through the which exits from the, you can say, left atrium. Then there are a lot of walls present, okay, semilunar walls, bicuspid wall. We'll talk about all these walls, okay, in the upcoming slide. Here aorta, again aorta, this is the largest artery present in the human. This also carries oxygenated blood. Pulmonary artery, we have already discussed. Vena cava, which is the largest vein, okay. This inferior vena cava, this carries the blood from the lower body, okay, this I've already told you. And this vena cava, this carries blood from the upper body regions. I've told you, head and neck. So this should be the superior vena cava, and this one should be inferior vena cava, okay. And you can see the flow of the blood here through these arrows, shows you the flow of the blood. Here the blood enters from here, then it reaches the right atrium first, okay, then it will enter the right ventricle, okay. And from here you can see the pulmonary artery, it also carries the deoxygenated blood, and then the left atrium and the left ventricle, this carries the oxygenated blood. All right, now you know all these terms. Now we will talk about the structure of the heart. Now, heart is a hollow muscular organ, okay, and it is made up of the cardiac muscle. So what are the muscles present in the heart? Cardiac muscle. Heart is a hollow muscular organ that lies obliquely in the thoracic region. So it is present in the thoracic region, in a cavity between the two lungs, that is pericardial cavity. Okay, now it is lined by two layers, outer layer and the inner pericardial membrane. Okay, so the heart, it is surrounded by a membrane known as pericardial membrane, and this pericardial membrane, it is made up of two layers. One is the outer layer, another one is the inner layer. Now these are filled with the fluid known as the pericardial fluids. Okay, so this fluid, this is present between this outer and the inner cardial membrane, and this is known as the pericardial fluid. And what is the role of this pericardial fluid? This pericardial fluid, it protects the heart from shock as well as the injury. All right. Now I've already told you heart is made up of 4 chambers. Okay, upper 2 chambers are known as the auricles, also known as the atria, whereas the lower 2 chambers, they are known as the ventricles. Now the auricles or the atria are the receiving chambers, so they receive the blood, and the ventricles are the pumping chambers, so they pump the blood, okay, you can say towards the body organ. So where will they pump the blood? They will pump the blood toward the body organs. That's why they are known as the pumping chambers. Now the walls of the ventricles are thicker. Why? Because they have to pump the blood. Okay, and now partition between the right and the left auricle. Okay, so you have seen in the image of the heart, there is a partition between the right as well as the left auricle, and this partition is known as interauricular septum. Okay, so this partition is the septum, and between right and the left ventricle, so this partition is known as interventricular septum, means between two ventricles. Clear? Now, four pulmonary veins. So pulmonary veins, okay, they are of four kinds. Okay, or you can say four pulmonary veins are present. So pulmonary veins, I've already told you, it will carry the oxygenated blood. Okay. So usually the veins, they carry deoxygenated blood, but pulmonary vein, it carries oxygenated blood, and it carries oxygenated blood from the lungs towards the heart. Okay. So it originates from the lungs, and it transports the blood towards the heart, oxygenated blood to the heart muscle cells or the muscle tissues. Now, four pulmonary veins, they enter into the left auricle first, two from each lung, bringing the oxygenated blood. All right. Now, I've already told you that auricles, they receive the blood, and ventricles, they pump the blood. Now, there is one auriculoventricular aperture with the bicuspid or the mitral valve. So bicuspid means, so bi means two, cuspid means you can say flaps. Okay, so there are two flaps in these kind of valves. One is anterior, one is posterior. This bicuspid valve is also known as mitral valve. This is present in the left auricles, which opens into the left ventricle. All right. Now the left ventricle has aortic valve. So valve in the left ventricle is known as the aortic valve, which has three semilunar cusps for the large artery, that is the dorsal aorta, which takes the oxygenated blood to all parts of the body. So aorta also carries the oxygenated blood. So this is clear. One you have to remember here, there are four pulmonary veins, okay, two from each lung. So this pulmonary vein carries the oxygenated blood. Okay, then there is one auriculoventricular aperture. Okay, auriculo means auricles and ventricles, ventricular means the ventricle. So there is an aperture which has this valve, bicuspid valve, also known as the mitral valve, in the left auricles, which open into the ventricles. Okay, so this aperture is known as the auriculoventricular aperture. Then here you can see the left ventricle has the aortic valve. All right, which has three semilunar cups. Okay, for the large artery known as the aorta. Now the right auricle. Now let's talk about the right auricle. It has opening for the superior vena cava. We have already seen in the image where the superior vena cava was present. So this superior vena cava, I have told you, it carries the deoxygenated blood from the head, neck, and the upper limbs. So I've already told you it carries the deoxygenated blood from the region above the abdomen. So from the head, neck, and the upper limbs, whereas the inferior vena cava, it receives the deoxygenated blood from rest of the body as well as the lower limbs, or you can say below the abdomen. Okay, that's why its name is inferior vena cava. So this is clear. Now the blood enters into the right ventricles through a tricuspid valve. So tricuspid means three. All right, so three flaps are present here in this valve. That's why it is known as the tricuspid valve. Now a coronary sinus that drains the venous blood from the heart muscles. Now what is coronary sinus? Coronary sinus, this is the largest vein of the heart, and it collects more than half of the deoxygenated blood from the heart muscles and channels it to the right atrium. Okay, this is the coronary sinus. It is the largest vein of the heart. Okay, clear? Now the right ventricle has a pulmonary valve. Okay, so valve present in the right ventricle is known as the pulmonary valve, which have 3 semilunar cusp for pulmonary artery carrying the deoxygenated blood to the lungs. Okay, pulmonary artery, I've already told you, it carries deoxygenated blood. Okay, and it carries the blood from the heart towards the lungs. Okay, for oxygenation. Clear? Now, the series of events which occur during one heartbeat, that is known as the cardiac cycle. So if someone asks you what is cardiac cycle, you can say it is a series of events which occur during one heartbeat. So one heartbeat, what is one heartbeat? You can say love and dub. You will study about this love and dub. You will also study about the systole and the diastole. So systole is the contraction, diastole is the relaxation. So in the upcoming slide, we'll be studying about the definition of these terms also. So all these terms you have to remember. So what you have to remember in the structure of the heart, you should remember about all the arteries. Okay. Then you should remember about the veins. Okay. Then you should also remember about the pulmonary. What is the pulmonary vein? Then you should know about the pulmonary artery and where it enters and where it exits. Okay, and what type of blood they carry. Then you should note about the valves, what kind of valves are present, okay, in the chambers. Then you should know about the septum, where the septum is present. Then you should know about the apertures, and then you should also know about the flow of the blood, that blood is entering where and blood is exiting where. All right, so we have seen atriums, they receive the blood, and ventricles, they pump the blood towards the body organs. So you should remember all these terms. All right. Now, here a note. So sometimes what happens, whenever you have seen, you must have seen in some kids, you can see also in some adults, there is a hole in their heart. Okay, and that has to be fixed. All right, otherwise there is leakage of the blood. Now, what is this hole in the heart or how this hole develops? So now during the fetal conditions, what happens? A flap valve, which is known as the foramen ovale. Okay, so this valve, which is known as the foramen ovale, this is present at interauricular septum. Okay, means between the auricles. All right, inter means between the auricles. We have studied about the interauricle and the interventricular septum. Okay, so this septum is, or this partition is present between the auricles. So this septum have a depression, which is known as the fossa ovalis. So this depression, okay, remains as such, and this forms the hole in the heart. All right, again, in the fetal conditions, a flap valve, which is known as the foramen ovale, this is present in the interauricular septum. Okay, and there is a depression present there, which is known as the fossa ovalis, and this forms the hole in the heart. And this needs to be fixed, otherwise there will be loss of the blood and the person can die also. Again, you can see the image of the heart here. All right, so we have studied about, there are 4 chambers: left atrium, left ventricles, and the right ventricles. I think now you will be able to understand the flow of the blood also. Here you can see the right pulmonary artery. All right, these are the pulmonary artery. This is the left pulmonary artery. Okay, here you can see this is the right atrium. Here is the superior and the inferior vena cava, which superior carries the blood from the upper body parts. Inferior vena cava carries the deoxygenated blood from the lower body parts. Here is the aorta. We have talked about the dorsal aorta also, which carries the oxygenated blood. Okay, then the coronary artery, this also carries the oxygenated blood. And here you can see the flow of the blood. So you can see blood is entering here. Okay, so this vena cava. Okay, this is the superior vena cava, which carries deoxygenated blood. This atrium, this receives the blood. All right. Here, this is the right atrium. This is the inferior vena cava. This is the right ventricle. Here, the blood enters here. Then, from the right atrium, it enters here in the right ventricles. Then you can see the blood flows here through the pulmonary artery. Here also you can see the direction of the blood flow. Here you can see the left atrium. This is the pulmonary vein here. Okay, pulmonary vein carries the oxygenated blood from lung, from the lungs towards the heart. Okay, we have already discussed pulmonary vein, it carries. So this is coming from the lungs. Here you can see direction is like here. It is entering the heart. Here you can see the valves present here. This is the bicuspid valve. Okay, this is also another valve, tendon supporting valve, and this is the left ventricle. All right, this is clear. Now let's talk about the blood pressure. What is the blood pressure? So till now we were studying about the structure of the heart and the blood flow. How is blood flow happening? So I've given you a general idea. We haven't studied it in detail, but I have given you a general idea. Okay. Now, what is blood pressure? It is the pressure of flow of the blood in the aorta and its main arteries. Now, the blood pressure, it varies according to the contraction as well as the relaxation of the blood. Okay, so some heart contracts and the next time the heart will relax, and this also creates the sound known as lub sound and the dub sound. So one is the lub sound and one is the dub sound. Okay, so in the condition of contraction means when the heart contracts, that is known as the systolic phase. So systolic phase means the contraction of the heart, and the sound which is produced during the contraction of the heart, that is known as the lub sound. Okay, now during the contraction phase or during the systolic phase, the blood pressure, it is about 120 millimeter of mercury. So Hg is mercury. So whenever we talk about the blood pressure, so we write 120 by 80 mm. So these are in mm. Okay. So the upper one, so this 120 value, this is during the contraction of the heart, means during the systolic phase. Okay, so this is during the systolic phase, and the lower one or the lower value is during the diastolic phase. Okay, this is clear. Now, this is this systolic pressure, means pressure generated during the contraction of the heart muscles. Now, another one is the diastolic pressure. What is diastolic pressure? So in the or during the relaxation or the diastolic phase, a sound that is created, that is known as the dub sound. So heartbeat is basically lub and dub. So during the diastolic phase, the blood pressure is around 80 mm of the Hg, and it is known as the diastolic pressure. Okay, this is clear. That's how we get this 180 by 120 by 80 value. Clear? Now let's understand about the systolic blood pressure and the diastolic blood pressure. So the systolic blood pressure, okay, the upper number means the 120, the value of 120 mm. Okay, this is the systolic blood pressure. This indicates the pressure exerted on the arteries during the heartbeat, or you can say during the contraction of the cardiac muscle or contraction of the heart. Now another one is the diastolic blood pressure, means the lower number. What is the lower number? It was 80 mm. All right. This indicates the pressure in the arteries while the heart is resting between the heartbeats. Okay, or when you can say during the relaxation, when the heart is relaxing or it is resting. So this is known as the diastolic blood pressure, and we get the value of 120 by 80 mm. This is the normal blood pressure for the humans. Okay, so if there is a variation in this value, then what happens? Then the person has to treat himself. Okay, or you can say if the value is higher. Okay, if the value of the systolic blood pressure is higher, means like 180 or 200, then you can say the person is having high blood pressure. If this value are low, then the person will have the low blood pressure, and accordingly the person have to be given medicines to increase the blood pressure or to decrease the blood pressure. All right, this is clear. Now, the normal blood pressure of a man of a 20 years of age is 120 by 80 mm. This we have already discussed. So now the fats, okay, consumption of lot of fat as well as due to anxiety. So this increase the blood pressure. All right, so fat can be deposited in the, or you can say fat or the cholesterol. Okay, these are deposited inside the blood vessels. You can also write cholesterol. So these are deposited inside the arteries, you can say, or the blood vessels. As well, anxiety. During anxiety, a lot of chemicals are released or some hormones are released that can lead to the changes in the blood pressure. Okay, so fats and anxiety, they increase the blood pressure, and the maximum normal blood pressure should should not exceed 150 in males and 140 in females. Okay, it should not increase. Okay, it should not exceed 150 in males and 140 in the females. Okay, this is correct. Now there is an instrument with which you can measure the blood pressure. Nowadays you can measure the blood pressure using the electronic devices also. Okay, so what you have to do, you have to place the instrument, and there is a connection, there is a wire that is connected, and then you can measure the blood pressure by wrapping that material onto your arm, and then you can measure the blood pressure electronically. So it will give you the systolic blood pressure as well as the diastolic blood pressure. Now the instrument that is used to measure the blood pressure, this is known as sphygmomanometer. Okay, so this is the instrument. You can say sphygmomanometer. Okay, this is an instrument which is used to measure the blood pressure. You can measure the blood pressure manually also. Okay, that is more accurate. All right, this is clear. So in this session, we have studied about the structure of the heart, and then we studied about the flow of the blood, how the flow of the blood takes place. So we talked about that in general terms. Okay, we haven't talked that in detail. And apart from this, that we also talked about the blood pressure. What should be the blood pressure in the normal human being? Okay, and when there is a changes in the blood pressure, then appropriate measures should be taken to bring the blood pressure to the normal conditions. And there is an instrument that is used for measuring the blood pressure that is known as sphygmomanometer. All right, so this was the end of this session. We'll be studying about the rest of the topics in the next session. All right, thank you very much for listening.